smell of roasted coffee beans and sizzling steaks drifted through the high-ceilinged restaurant as Sarah balanced 3 plates on her arm. To the guests, she was just another uniformed waitress gliding between tables. But behind her steady smile lived a story of struggle and quiet determination. Every night after work, she studied textbooks and online courses, hoping one day to finish the degree she had left behind when her father fell ill. Her meager tips went straight to her younger brother's tuition and her mother's medication. She rarely had time for herself, yet she carried herself with a grace that no exhaustion could dim. On that rainy Thursday evening, the restaurant buzzed with a different kind of energy. In the private lounge sat Mr. Richard Hale, a self-made millionaire known for his booming voice, expensive suits, and love of public spectacle. He was hosting a dinner for international partners, his laughter echoing above the clatter of cutlery. When Sarah approached to refill water glasses, she caught fragments of his conversation in a language most of the staff could not identify. She understood it instantly. Her father had spoken it at home when she was a child. But she kept her eyes down and continued her work. Richard noticed her pause and smirked. "Curious, aren't you?" he said loudly, waving a stack of papers written in the same foreign tongue. "This young lady is worth more than your yearly wage," his companions chuckled. "Tell you what," he added, his voice dripping with mock generosity. "Translate this perfectly and my salary is yours." The room erupted in laughter. For them it was just a joke, another way for a powerful man to flaunt his status. For Sarah, it was a moment that made her heart pound. She thought of the nights she had spent translating documents for practice, of the dictionary pages worn thin by her fingers. She felt a flicker of fire ignite behind her calm expression. People might see only a waitress in a faded uniform, but she knew the skills and knowledge that lived beneath. As she set the last glass on the table, she looked up and met his eyes for the first time, and a small, confident smile formed on her lips. Sarah left the table with her heart thudding like a drum. She moved swiftly through the restaurant's double doors into the kitchen, but her thoughts stayed on the stack of papers Mr. Hale had waved in the air. It wasn't just any random challenge to her. It was the very language her father had taught her at their kitchen table years ago. When he told her, "Knowledge is your passport, Sarah, it will take you further than money ever will." Those lessons had become her anchor through years of hardship. Life had not been kind since her father's passing. Her mother's arthritis had worsened, leaving her nearly housebound. Her younger brother Amir was brilliant but struggling to pay for his final semester at college. The reminder on her phone that morning had been stark. Tuition due Monday or Amir's enrollment would be suspended. She had already picked up extra shifts, taken freelance translation gigs at night, even skipped meals to make ends meet. Still, she was short. Mr. Hale's offhand, "My salary is yours," wasn't just a stunt to her. It was the exact miracle she'd been praying for. But miracles, she knew, were never handed out easily. She wiped her hands on her apron and steadied her breathing. The risk of speaking up loomed large. If she failed to translate perfectly, she would become a punchline at best and at worst lose the respect of her manager or even her job. People in power often turned generosity into a trap, yet there was another voice inside her, quieter but stronger, the same voice that had guided her through late nights of study and endless sacrifices. "This is what you've prepared for. You can do this." Back in the dining area, the conversation at Mr. Hale's table grew louder. His partners leaned in, debating strategies and deadlines. Sarah caught more words floating above the noise. She could almost see the meaning of each clause in her mind, like subtitles appearing on a screen. She wondered if they knew how close they were to losing the deal because of a missing translator. She glanced around. None of the other staff seemed remotely aware of the opportunity. Most were too busy clearing tables and refilling bread baskets. A few looked at the group with envy or irritation. But no one else had the key to unlock those documents. Only she did. She remembered another time when people had underestimated her. High school debates where she translated for foreign exchange students. The online forums where she quietly corrected flawed translations under a pseudonym. No one had known it was her. That anonymity had been a shield, but also a cage. Tonight she felt the bars bending. She poured coffee for a nearby couple, her mind racing. If she stepped forward, she wouldn't just be challenging Mr. Hale's arrogance. She would be stepping into her own power. This wasn't about showing off. It was about survival. And more than that, about proving to herself that she was more than a shadow moving through life unseen. As she set down the coffee pot, her phone buzzed again. A message from Amir. Any chance of overtime? I'm scared, Sarah. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She typed back, working on it. Trust me. Her hands trembled as she slid the phone back into her pocket. She straightened, smoothing her apron. The doubt tried one last time to creep in. What if you fail? But she had spent years preparing for exactly this. She took a deep breath and turned toward the private lounge. Inside, Mr. Hale was still laughing, flipping through the pages as Vanessa, his vice president, stumbled over a sentence with her translation app. The partners exchanged uneasy looks. Time was running out for them, too. Sarah stepped closer, her steps light but deliberate. Every sound in the restaurant seemed to fade, replaced by the echo of her father's words. Knowledge is your passport. She felt the weight of every sacrifice, every late-night study session, every whispered prayer. She no longer felt like a waitress in a worn apron. She felt like someone standing at the edge of her future. With her chin raised and her voice calm but firm, she prepared to speak up. Sarah stepped into the VIP section, the murmur of the restaurant fading behind her like a closing curtain. Mr. Hale and his team were bent over the contracts, their voices tight with stress. His vice president was hunched over her phone, whispering into a translation app that kept spitting out nonsense. The Dubai partners were waiting for answers. One wrong phrase could cost millions. Excuse me, sir, Sarah said softly. Every head turned. Mr. Hale looked up, eyebrow arched. Yes? More bread? No, sir, she replied, her voice steady. You asked someone to translate this. I can. For a moment, the room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Then the laughter started again. A chuckle from one of the junior executives, then a low guffaw from Mr. Hale himself. You? He said, his eyes sweeping over her black uniform, the apron tied at her waist. You're a waitress, not a linguist. Sarah didn't flinch. I speak 5 languages, she said calmly. Arabic, Farsi, French, Spanish, and English. My father taught me. This document is in Arabic with regional dialects. Your app is misreading the clauses. The vice president's smirk faltered. You're joking. I'm not, Sarah said. She reached for the top page of the contract. Give me one section. Let me show you. Mr. Hale leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. His voice was tinged with both amusement and irritation. All right, waitress. Translate this paragraph. If you're right, my salary is yours. He shoved a section of the document toward her. Go on, show us your magic trick. Sarah picked up the paper. Her fingers didn't tremble. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment without even realizing it. She scanned the text once and began to speak. Her voice was clear, low, and confident. She translated line by line, explaining each phrase as she went. She didn't just swap words. She carried the meaning, the tone, the cultural weight behind each clause. She pointed to a section halfway through. Here, your version says community investment. That's wrong. It says community stability, which refers to restrictions on displacing residents. If you miss that, you're violating local law and risking lawsuits. The vice president's jaw dropped. One of the junior executives pulled out his phone and typed furiously, checking her words with an online translator. His eyes went wide. She's right, he muttered. Sarah went on, unraveling another tricky passage. And here the term low-cost development is a legal phrase. It triggers government incentives but also obligations to build affordable housing. That's not in your translation either. Mr. Hale stopped laughing. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, watching her with narrowed eyes. Keep going, he said quietly. Sarah finished the section and placed the paper back on the table. The room was silent. Even the kitchen noise outside seemed to have disappeared. The vice president spoke first. She's correct. Every part. Our app didn't catch any of that. Mr. Hale studied her for a long moment. His amusement was gone, replaced by something sharper. Curiosity, respect, maybe even a flicker of embarrassment. Who are you? He asked. I'm Sarah, she said simply. A waitress, yes, but also a translator. I do freelance work at night. And I couldn't watch you sign something that would hurt families overseas just because of a bad translation. The vice president shifted uncomfortably. The junior executive cleared his throat. Mr. Hale drummed his fingers on the table. So you're the one who saved this deal without even being on the payroll? Sarah said nothing. She had shown what she needed to show. Mr. Hale exhaled slowly. "Sit down," he said at last, gesturing to an empty chair. "You're not leaving until we go through this entire document together." Sarah hesitated, then sat. For the first time all evening, she wasn't serving. She was leading. Sarah sat down at the VIP table, the same one where she had been quietly serving plates just hours ago. The shift was electric. She wasn't holding a tray anymore. She was holding their attention. The executives leaned in as she flipped through the pages, her silver pen gliding as she made notes in the margins. Line by line, she untangled the legal knots in front of them. Every clause she explained was another invisible wall coming down. She highlighted the red flags in clear, respectful language, but she also offered solutions, alternatives that would satisfy local laws and still keep the project profitable. The partners from Dubai, patched in via video call, sat straighter with each translation, nodding slowly. They had been skeptical at first, but now their faces softened into interest. Mr. Hale kept watching her, silent, his expression unreadable. He wasn't the man who had laughed at a waitress anymore. He was a businessman watching someone save his company from a disaster he hadn't even seen coming. Half an hour passed like minutes. When Sarah reached the final page, she looked up. "That's all of it," she said quietly. "If you adjust these 3 clauses and include an addendum about community stability, your deal will be ethical and legally sound." For a long time, no one spoke. Then one of the junior executives said, "She just saved us millions." On the screen, one of the Dubai partners leaned toward his camera. "This woman, who is she?" he asked in accented English. "She understands our culture better than your entire legal team." Sarah sat back, unsure what to say. She could feel her hands trembling under the table. Mr. Hale finally stood up. "She's the reason this deal isn't dead," he said. His voice had lost all mockery. It was steady and deliberate now. He turned to Sarah. "You did this?" "Yes," she said simply. "You're the midnight helper, aren't you?" Her eyes flickered. She had never told anyone, but it was obvious now. "I couldn't let you sign something that would hurt people," she said. "And I needed the money for my family." Mr. Hale exhaled slowly and sat down again. "Well, damn," he said. "You're not just a waitress." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a check. $35,000. My salary for the week. You earned it. Sarah blinked, the numbers blurring for a second. It was real. More than enough to pay Amir's tuition, catch up on bills, and cover her mother's medication. But Mr. Hale wasn't done. "The Dubai partners are impressed. They want you on this deal officially. You'd be our cultural advisor, effective immediately. 6 figures, benefits, travel, you'd be working directly with me." The vice president's jaw tightened. She started to protest, but Mr. Hale cut her off with a glance. "Pack your things," he said to her. "You're done here." Sarah felt a rush of disbelief and relief all at once. She wasn't just saving a deal. She was rewriting her life. The Dubai partners were still on the call, smiling now. "Congratulations," one said. "You have earned our respect." Sarah looked down at the check, then back at Mr. Hale. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice didn't shake. "I'll do it. But I want to make sure these deals protect people, not just profit." Mr. Hale cracked a faint smile. "That's why you're the right person." As the meeting wrapped up, Sarah tucked the check into her pocket, feeling the weight of the silver pen she still carried from her father. She wasn't hidden anymore. She had stepped out of the shadows and into her future. Outside the VIP room, the kitchen buzzed with normal noise again. But for Sarah, nothing would ever be the same. 6 months later, the soft hiss of a coffee machine replaced the clatter of dishes that used to surround Sarah's mornings. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, on the 22nd floor of Hale Global's downtown headquarters. The skyline glittered outside like a promise fulfilled. She no longer wore a uniform. Instead, a tailored navy dress and a delicate gold necklace framed her face. A nameplate on her desk read Sarah Khan, Cultural Advisor. The Dubai project had not only survived, it had thrived. Because of her translations and cultural guidance, the company had secured permits, won community support, and avoided lawsuits. Hale Global posted its highest quarterly gains in years. But for Sarah, the true victory wasn't the headlines or the bonuses. It was what had changed at home. Her brother Amir graduated last month, debt-free. At the ceremony, he had spotted her in the crowd and waved, the bright sash of his honors cords catching the light. Afterward, he hugged her so tightly she could feel his gratitude in his heartbeat. "You saved me, Sarah," he whispered. "You saved us." Her mother moved more easily now, her medication and physical therapy fully covered by Sarah's new insurance plan. They had left the cramped apartment behind for a modest but sunny two-bedroom near the park. On weekends, Sarah cooked for her family at a real dining table instead of balancing plates on a couch. Her silver pen, the one that had anchored her through countless late nights of translating, sat in a glass holder on her desk, a small reminder of where she had started. At Hale Global, the dynamic had shifted too. Mr. Hale still had the clipped, decisive manner of a high-stakes executive, but now he paused when Sarah spoke. "She's got the insight we need," he would say at meetings. Once his jaw had dropped at her knowledge in disbelief. Now it dropped in respect. He had even instituted a new policy requiring cultural and ethical reviews of every international deal, citing her as the model. Vanessa, the vice president who had once smirked at Sarah, was gone. Word traveled quickly in their industry. Her reputation had been tarnished, and no major firm wanted the risk. Sarah didn't gloat. She simply moved forward, knowing the work spoke for itself. Last month, at a global development conference, a reporter had asked Sarah for her story. She had smiled and said, "It's about seeing people's real value. Sometimes the right person for the job isn't in a boardroom. She's carrying a tray, quietly preparing for her chance." The quote went viral on social media, inspiring thousands of comments from people who had been overlooked in their own jobs. Back home, life had found a new rhythm. One Friday evening, her family gathered for dinner. Amir raised a glass of sparkling water. "To Sarah," he said. "From waitress to boss," her mother smiled, eyes glistening. "Your father would be proud. You showed them." Sarah twirled the silver pen between her fingers and felt its weight. It was no longer a talisman for surviving. It was a symbol of thriving. She wasn't hidden anymore. She had stepped into her power and changed her family's trajectory forever. She knew there would be new challenges ahead, new contracts, new cultures to navigate, new skeptics to face, but she wasn't afraid. She had already proven that preparation, integrity, and courage could open doors that seemed locked. Looking out at the city lights that night, she whispered to herself the words her father had once told her, "Knowledge is your passport." It had taken her from the shadows of a restaurant floor to a seat at the table where decisions were made. And now she was determined to make sure that table was big enough for others like her. A drizzle tapped against the window of Sarah's office as she prepared her notes for an upcoming conference. In just half a year, she had gone from an anonymous midnight helper to a sought-after voice in global development. Invitations filled her inbox. Universities wanted her as a guest speaker. Nonprofits wanted her guidance on ethical land use. Even small restaurants asked her to talk to their staff about perseverance. Yet she still kept the same morning ritual, making tea, reading news in different languages, and writing a few lines in her journal with her grandfather's silver pen. It reminded her that even the biggest victories start with small, unseen habits. The Dubai project had become a case study at business schools for cultural due diligence. Marcus Hale spoke openly now about how close they had come to disaster and how one young woman's courage and expertise saved both the deal and the company's reputation. In interviews, he no longer called her the waitress, but our most valuable advisor. At a recent staff meeting, he told the room, "Never underestimate the quietest person in the room. Talent doesn't always come in a suit." The staff applauded, some of them looking at Sarah with new respect. But Sarah's proudest moments weren't on stage or in boardrooms. They happened in quieter places, walking her mother through a park without worrying about medical bills, seeing Amir talk about applying to graduate school overseas, replying to emails from strangers who wrote, "I was just like you. Your story gave me courage to apply for my dream job." Each message reminded her that the story was bigger than a translation or a paycheck. It was about showing that skill and integrity can outshine prejudice. One evening she sat at her kitchen table, the same table where months earlier she had agonized over bills, and began drafting a scholarship fund for students from working-class families who were bilingual. "If talent gave me my break," she wrote, "opportunity will give them theirs." The idea thrilled her, not just to climb, but to lift. At the next conference, standing under bright lights, She told her story to a packed hall. She didn't hide the hard parts, the exhaustion, the ridicule, the nights she wanted to give up. But every plate I carried taught me discipline. Every translation I did for pennies taught me mastery. And every insult taught me patience, she said. So when the moment came, I was ready. The audience rose to its feet, clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Back at home that weekend, her family gathered again. Amir raised his glass. To courage, he said. Her mother smiled. To never hiding your strength. Sarah felt the silver pen in her pocket and looked around the table. She realized that what had changed was not just her job or income, but her identity. She was no longer the shadow moving through life unnoticed. She was a light others could follow. As the night sky deepened beyond the window, she opened her laptop and drafted a note to her younger self. The one who had stood at a millionaire's table, heart pounding, unsure if she should speak. You are ready, she wrote. Your skills are real. Don't be afraid to show them. She saved it as a reminder, knowing there would always be new rooms to walk into, new people to prove wrong, and new communities to protect. Sarah smiled, closed the laptop, and joined her family at the table. She had translated more than a document. She had translated her life from survival to impact, and she knew this was only the beginning. The first morning of spring sunlight spilled across the city, glinting off glass towers and wet sidewalks. Sarah stood at the entrance of a community center that still smelled faintly of fresh paint. A banner hung above the doors. Opening ceremony, the Hail Rafiq Language and Leadership Academy. This was the dream she had written into her journal months ago. A place where young people from immigrant and working-class families could learn languages, leadership and negotiation skills without crushing debt. Inside, a crowd of students, teachers, and reporters buzzed with excitement. Some recognized her from the viral article about the waitress who saved the deal. Marcus Hale arrived a few minutes later, dressed more simply than usual, no entourage trailing behind. He had quietly donated the initial funds for the center. As he approached the podium, he caught Sarah's eye and gave a respectful nod. She remembered their first meeting, the mock laughter, the challenge, and marveled at how different this moment felt. He began his speech by telling the crowd, I once made the mistake of judging someone by their uniform. That person saved my company and taught me humility. Today I'm proud to stand beside her as a partner. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stepped up to the microphone. The hall went quiet. She glanced at the rows of eager faces, some nervous, some defiant, some just curious, and felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. I started out serving tables, she began, but I was also studying, translating, and hoping for a chance to prove myself. Many of you are in that place now. Let me tell you, your background is not a cage. It's training. It's shaping you for the moment when you'll be tested. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. She told them about her family, about the night she took the papers from Marcus's hand and started to translate, about the sleepless hours that led to mastery. She didn't glamorize the struggle. She emphasized the preparation, the self-respect, and the willingness to seize opportunity. Talent plus discipline plus courage equals transformation, she said, writing the equation on a whiteboard behind her. That's what this academy is about. After the ribbon cutting, students flooded into classrooms with bright maps on the walls and shelves full of dictionaries. One girl, no older than 15, lingered near Sarah. Miss Sarah, she whispered, I know Pashto and English. Do you think that can be useful? Sarah crouched to meet her eyes. It's already useful, she said. You're a bridge between worlds. Now let's build on it. The girl's shy smile reminded Sarah of her younger self. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Sarah stepped outside into the fresh air. Her phone buzzed with a message from a conference in Geneva inviting her to speak about hidden talent in the global workforce. Another buzz. A university wanted her to guest lecture. She smiled but didn't answer yet. Right now she wanted to feel the moment fully, the hum of possibility, the voices of students inside, the scent of new beginnings. She realized that what had started as an act of courage at one dinner table had grown into a movement. She had moved from surviving shifts to shaping systems, from translating words to translating hope into action. The Millionaire's Challenge had been a spark. Her persistence had been the fuel. And now, standing in front of a school filled with young people who might one day surpass her, she felt a deep, steady joy. Looking at the sky, Sarah whispered to herself, This is only the first translation. There are many more languages of opportunity to learn. Then she walked back inside, ready to teach, to mentor, and to keep proving, to herself and to the world, that no uniform, no background, no prejudice can contain the power of prepared courage. The sun dipped low behind the skyline as the last group of students left the academy. Sarah stood by the doorway, a cup of tea warming her hands, watching the street fill with ordinary people heading home. Waiters, cashiers, drivers, office workers. She saw herself in them. They were more than their uniforms. Inside each of them, she knew, was a hidden skill, a quiet dream, a moment waiting to be claimed. Inside the main hall, the walls were covered with world maps and quotes in different languages. A faint echo of laughter drifted from a classroom where a volunteer was teaching a group of teenagers basic translation exercises. Sarah closed her eyes for a second and listened. It was the sound of something beginning. Her phone buzzed again, another invitation, another interview request. She smiled but slipped the phone back into her bag. Not every victory needed to be broadcast. Some could simply be lived. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and started walking toward the train station. With each step, memories of that night in the restaurant returned. The smirk on Marcus Hale's face, the laughter of the guests, the weight of the papers in her hands. And then the sound of her own voice, steady and sure, as she began to translate. She realized that what had changed her life wasn't luck, or even the challenge itself, but the preparation and courage she had built quietly for years. It was the willingness to stand up when the moment arrived. That was what she wanted to leave with every student who walked through her academy's doors. As she descended into the subway, Sarah pulled out her journal and wrote one line across a fresh page. "When your chance comes, be ready, and take it." She underlined it twice, then closed the book with a satisfied snap. The train arrived, doors sliding open, and she stepped on board. Outside, the city lights flickered on. Somewhere, another young person was studying late after a shift, dreaming of an opportunity. Sarah hoped her story would reach them, reminding them that even the smallest skills can open the largest doors, and that the next jaw to drop could belong to anyone who dares to underestimate them.